pretty peoples. KawaJapa no Kyodori desu. I am Kyodori from KawaJapa. In today's mini lesson, we are going to talk about a problem that can occasionally be caused by the potential form of verbs, that is, the potential helper verb ru rareru. Spylorum-san says in a very intelligent and well thought out question, you say that watashi wa hon ga yomeru means as for me the book is readable. Now I would understand the sentence hon wa watashi ga yomeru. As for the book, I can read it. So for me, both sentences say the same, just with different emphasis. But logically, if I simply exchange hon and watashi, one of them should say the book can read me. Am I wrong here? Well, from an English grammar point of view, you wouldn't be wrong. But the problem that arises here is really concerned with treating Japanese as if it were English and also treating the helper verb ru rareru, in this case ru, hon ga yomeru, as if it were a conjugation. It's not a conjugation, as I've pointed out before. So what is happening here? The wa doesn't affect anything because it's a non-logical particle, but we have changed the logical particle ga, the crux particle of every Japanese sentence, from hon to watashi, and yet we're not, as you correctly say, changing the logic of the sentence. Why would that be? Well, in English terms, what's happened is that something else has flipped along with the ga, and so the double flip leaves us back where we started. But this is only if we're looking at it as if it were an English sentence. What's happened here is that in English terms, yomeru has flipped its meaning. In watashi wa hon ga yomeru, we're saying, as for me, the book is readable. And in hon wa watashi ga yomeru, we're saying, as for the book, I can read it. So being readable and being able to read are, if we are thinking of it as the English word and the English grammar, they are reversing polarity, aren't they? But what we need to understand here is that this is not a conjugation. What it is a combined verb and helper verb. Yomu, to read, plus ru, which means can. So the way of putting it in English would be to say something like read can or read possible. And it's a verb, so what it's doing is making reading possible. Now once we understand that, we can see a little more what's happening in these two sentences. Watashi wa hon ga yomeru. In relation to me, the book does read can. The book makes read possible. So the book is doing the action here, and what it's doing is making reading possible by being readable. In the other sentence, hon wa watashi ga yomeru, it's I who am doing the making reading possible. In relation to the book, I do read can. I make reading possible, and how do I do that? Well, obviously I do it by being able to read the book. So, suppose we really wanted to say, as for the book, it can read me. Is that possible in Japanese? Of course it's possible. We'd have to say something like hon ga watashi wo yomeru. In other words, we have to put in some extra information to make it clear that the book is not simply intransitively being readable, it has a direct object. It's not just sitting there being readable, it's reading something else. And normally we don't have to do that because we can rely on the regular nature of books and people to make the meaning of the sentence clear. The important thing to understand is that potential verbs, essentially what they mean is the verb plus can plus possible. So you see, the potential yomeru is not really flip-flopping. In both cases, the ga marked actor is making reading possible. It is manifesting the state in which reading is possible. It's not doing two different things in the two different sentences, but it is a very different way of looking at the activity than the one presented by English grammar. It's not even easy to express in English, which is why I've had to use rather awkward terminology like manifesting the state in which reading is possible. But once we understand that, it does make sense. And I'm just going to address another question here which people sometimes ask, which is, do I really have to think of Japanese in terms of these rather convoluted and unnatural translations? And the answer to that is no. No, of course you don't. You shouldn't be thinking of Japanese in terms of these convoluted explanations any more than you need to. And even less should you be thinking of it in terms of more natural but misleading English translations that the textbooks deal in. You should be aiming toward thinking of Japanese in terms of, guess what, Japanese. Now that takes practice, and nothing I can teach you is going to take away the need to practice. However much driving instruction you get out of a book or a video, it's not going to take away the need to get behind the wheel. But what these explanations can do is cut short the process of learning how the language works. If you want to know more about how Japanese is really structured, we recommend Unlocking Japanese, which is available at Amazon in both paperback and Kindle editions. Thank you for attending this mini lesson. これからもよろしくお願いします. Class dismissed.